Righto guys, welcome back. We are back on the channel. We're doing another reaction video. It just started pissing down here. But anyway, if you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe. This is a lady called Gabrielle Linda. I believe that she's from Canada. She's living in Australia and she's going to do a reaction, and I'm going to react to her reaction of Australian slang. So let's get started. If you like her, make sure you go over and show some love, like and subscribe to her. Also, if you have the time, help the whales, help the dolphins, help the sea turtles, like and subscribe to me as well. So let's get into it. 26 weird things Australians say. Let's see what she has to say.
Good morning from Australia. Weather update is it is very rainy today. So I will not be getting out of this Udi until I need to go to work in like half an hour, 45 minutes. But I thought today it would be fun to sit down and share with you all some weird things as a Canadian that I've heard Australians say since coming here on my working holiday visa.
Alright, so the first thing is that a hoodie would have to have a hood. I can't see the hood there, so we would probably call that a jumper, which is also slang for sheep, a jumbuck or a jumper. Anyway.
But okay, let's just get right into it because I have been keeping a list since getting here. But the first thing I noticed that was kind of weird that Australians said to me was, how are you going? Like in Canada, we ask, how are you doing? But in Australia, to see like how you are, they ask, how are you going? Instead of how are you doing. The next thing.
Alright, so very common in Australia, how you going? Alright, so it's just a way of talking to, you wouldn't necessarily, well you would say it to a stranger, but you would change the way that you say it. If you're saying it to your friend, it'd be how you going, mate. But if you're talking to a stranger, if you sat next to someone on the bus, it would be how are you going? Just means how are you? What are you doing? All the same things.
Thing Australians say is too easy, as in like right on or like awesome, thank you.
Can you go get that for me? Yeah, too easy. Just means yes, or no problems, no worries, no walkers, no furries. Lots of different ways that we say no problems. Sometimes we even say something like no problema. Yeah, but too easy. Yeah, it's just something that's easy to do. So yeah, I'll do that for you.
Like when you do something for them or you tell them something and they're like accepting what you're saying, they say too easy. Another one they say that's kind of along the same lines is legend, or they say you're a legend.
Alright, so someone's a legend just means that you're a good person. Oh, you're a legend. Too easy, mate. Can I borrow your car? Yeah, too easy, mate. Oh, you're a legend. Just means that you're a good person. Yeah, pretty common.
Legend, or if you say something that they like, they just say legend. Of course, the classic cheers. They say cheers a lot. It's like a word of approval, or sometimes even like thank you, they'll say cheers.
Well, everyone says that. Cheers. Alright, so that's not an Australian thing. I would imagine most English speakers would say cheers. Either means cheers as in have a drink or cheers as in thanks.
Something that I actually really like Australians saying is darl. Darl.
Alright, so dal is a very common word that's used among Australians, just means darling. You do have to be a little bit careful the way that you say it. You never ever. So Australians talk to each other with affectionate words, sweetheart or darling or dal or hun, honey bun, these sorts of words, and they're used quite commonly. Even when you're shopping, you go down the bakery, you go, dal, can I have a pie? Alright, you're just calling the person. So this is for a woman, obviously. You would never use this for a man. If it was a man, you'd say mate. Yeah. Hey mate, can I have a pie? But if it's a woman, you'd say dal. But you have to be careful the way that you use it. So if I'm talking to an older person, an older woman, it would be, "Hey, doll, can I get a pie, please?" If I'm talking to a woman that's younger than me, and particularly younger than me, who's 18, 16, something like that, I would tend to say darling. But the way you say it is very important. You can't go, "Can I have a pie, darling?" That's too sexy. You want, "Oh, can I get a pie, darling?" It's just an affectionate way to talk to people. You'll hear old people, old women, turn around and say to men, "What do you want, hun?" "Ah, doll, can I just get a pie?" Alright, it's just a nice way of talking to each other. That's all it means.
Girl. It kind of sounds like doll when they're saying it, but it's like short for darling. Like, thanks, doll. It's cute. And I've never heard anyone in Canada say that before. Obviously, in true Australian fashion, I've never heard that word be used. So,
Alright, so the C word is very common in Australia. We don't use it as a derogative term. It can be used if that, but again, it's the way that you pronounce it. But not with women, but particularly with men. If you've got your mates with you, they will call you the C word, but it doesn't mean what it means. It means mate. "Oh, how are you?" "Yeah, oh, what have you been up to?" Okay, so it's used as a term of affection, but it can be used in a bad way with the attitude "you," but generally it's used as friend. But it's pretty common.
much. I actually don't know if I've ever really heard anyone use that word. In Canada, we mostly just drop like F bombs every second word. So yeah, I'd never really heard
Well, we drop F bombs constantly in Australia as well. It's an adjective.
before, but they say it all the time. They say it to their friends. It can be like an endearing thing, or it can just mean like a person. Like, I don't know, they use it all the time. Another one that I know isn't like purely just Australian, it's also from like Europe and stuff. They just say rubbish. We don't say rubbish, we say like garbage or trash, and they say rubbish, so I think that's kind of funny. Another
Alright, so there's a couple of ways you can use rubbish. We also use garbage. Generally, if we're talking about a person, we would say that they're a garbage person. But if we're talking about what they're talking about, we would say that's rubbish. Yeah, but it also just does mean trash. Okay, take out the rubbish, take out the garbage, take out the bin. We don't use trash. We would tend to use trash more like trash talk, which just means rubbish talk. But yeah, but they're interchangeable, of course. Trash talk, garbage talk, rubbish. But generally, rubbish would be used for waste and also what somebody says. If you're talking about the person particularly, you would say that they're a garbage person. And that's not the same as garbo, which is the person who picks up your garbage.
other weird one that they say when you say thank you, instead of saying like it's all good, I feel like that's when in Canada we say it's like, oh, no problem, like it's all good. They'll say it's all right. And that one kind of threw me off at the beginning because in Canada, I feel like we don't really say like it's all right as like a no problem thing. It's like, it's all right. It's all right. Don't worry about it. Like you've done something wrong, but it's all right. Because I
Don't worry about it. It's alright, mate. We also, like I said before, we also say no worries. Okay, don't worry about it. And there's the rude version, which is effing worries, no effing worries. But most people will flip that over and say no waka, no whacking furries. But that also becomes no wuckers and also no furries. Alright, so it's a play on words. But yeah, you'll hear this commonly. It's alright.
can handle it. You know what I mean? Rather than like, oh, it's no problem. You're welcome.
Also, just on the word mate, alright, so even women get called mate, and most women will call women mate, and most men will call people mate, So mate just means friend, but it wouldn't, I would say, oh, this is my Canadian mate, even though she's a woman. So mate is just a generic word that we use for friend.
Yeah, they say it instead of you're welcome. Something funny that I've heard Australians say that I really like actually is a feed, like a meal. If they're going to eat some food, I'm just going for a quick feed. I'm here to grab myself a feed. Yeah, I like that one. I think it's neat.
Yeah, so it just means that you're going to eat something. I need a feed. I want a feed. I'm going down the pub to have a feed. Um, you also hear people say fanging, which is the fangs in your teeth. If you say you're fanging, that means that you're hungry. Oh, I'm really fanging. I need a feed. Just means you need to eat.
They call liquor stores bottle-os or bottle shops. And a lot of Australian bottle-os or bottle shops are drive-through, which is strange. We don't have that in Canada. They call
Okay, so the difference between a bottle-o and a drive-through is that the drive-through is connected to the pub. Okay, there's very few drive-throughs that are part of a shop. They're always connected to a pub or connected to a hotel. And you drive the car in there and ask the dude and say, mate, can I get a 6 pack of 4X Gold? Alright, and you don't have to get out of the car. He will give it to you, you pay him, everything's done. That's called a drive through. Connected to a pub or a hotel. A bottle-o is different. That is a standalone liquor store. Bottle-o.
gas stations a servo, like a service station, I guess. We just call them gas stations. They have this weird nickname for
Alright, so servo is a service station. Um, we don't say gas, we say petrol. So we use the English. We say petrol station or servo. I've noticed a little bit since The Simpsons started, you will always, because in Australia your servo has most times will have some sort of convenience store. So we'll have a 7-Eleven or we'll have some sort of convenience store inside the service station as well. So a lot of people go to the servo just to buy chips or to buy drinks or something, ice. They're not actually there to get petrol. So because of that, and because a lot of the service stations or the servos in Australia are owned by Indians, a lot of them, a lot of people also say Quickie Mart, which is a reference to The Simpsons.
the afternoon called arvo. They'll say this arvo. Also, when I say it in my accent, everything sounds so harsh and like not.
Alright, so the arvo is the afternoon. You can also say arvi. So there's a couple of words for this. I'll see you this arvo, but that's all one word. This arvo, this arvi. Alright, just means afternoon. Tomorrow arvo, tomorrow arvi. Yesterday arvo, yesterday arvi.
Not cool, but yeah. Arvo, I didn't know what that was when I first got here, but it
Not to be confused with avo. Okay, so arvo and avo. Avo is an avocado.
just means afternoon. They call McDonald's Macca's, which I'd never heard before. I've heard people call it Don's in Canada. We call it Don's, Mickey D's, but I'd never heard Macca's. That's what everyone calls it here. They call trucks Ute.
Alright, so we definitely do call Macca's, and it's probably one of the few countries in the world where they actually changed the signage of McDonald's to what we call it, which is a Macca's. So you will actually see the sign with the golden arches, and underneath it'll say Macca's. Also, you should have a look at the difference between Australian McDonald's compared to the rest of the world. We have McCafes, so they even sell apples and fruit and salads and all sorts of stuff. Alright, so she's going to do Ute now, which...
Utes. Never heard that one.
Okay, so she called that a truck. Alright, so the difference between our truck and Ute. So a Ute in Australia is a pickup truck. Alright, so it's a flatbed car, whereas a truck is what Americans would call a rig or an 18 wheeler, something like that. We don't call our cars trucks, we call trucks trucks. You know, you don't have a pickup truck or anything like that. So ute just means utility. But you will see on the back of utes a lot of people put stickers that says uterus, just as a laugh.
They call candies lollies, which I thought lollies were just like a lollipop, but no, it's like any kind of candy are called lollies. Oh, another thing they say.
Yeah, lolly's very common. We don't say candy at all. Everything is a lolly. Unless it's chocolate, then it's just a chocolate bar. Um, Cotton candy, which would be the American version, we call fairy floss. But yeah, candies. More the younger people are using candy more and more now because of the American influence, but everyone calls them a lolly. Even like a cough medicine is called a cough lolly, not a cough drop or a lozenge or something like that. It's a cough lolly.
Instead of like no problem is no drama. Just kind of neat. They call.
Okay, again, no worries, no wuckers, no furries, no drama, mate. Don't worry about it. It's not a problem. That's all it means.
Sausages like hot dogs, snags. Well, I guess more like smokies. And also, when they eat their hot dogs, they don't use hot dog buns. Everyone here uses white bread folded around the snag, which I thought was a little funny because the only time we really.
All right, so she's talking about difference. So there, you would have a hot dog. So if you had a Wiener, that would go into a hot dog bun. But she's talking about sausages here, which are snags. And generally, we would have a snag sanger, which is just a piece of bread with some butter, put a sausage on top of it, bit of tomato sauce or ketchup, and a bit of onion, maybe a bit of cheese if you're feeling like that. But yeah, so she's saying that a hot dog would not go in a hot dog bun. It would. But a sausage goes on a piece of bread, piece of white bread. Interesting as well, most of this is done at the hardware. So if you go down to the hardware, you go down to Bunnings, they always have like a charity event where it's $2, you buy a snag sanger, and some of the proceeds goes to helping out people. So pretty common thing in Australia. And also on election day, most election polling places will have some sort of snag sangers for sale out the front.
We do that in Canada is when we like run out of hot dog buns, but they do that as their first option here. I also didn't know what a swag was until I came here. There are a lot of people that have swags, and they're basically just like a single.
Alright, so if you're American or Canadian, you probably think swag's like the way that you walk, but a swag in Australia is like a sleeping bag, but a weatherproof sleeping bag that you take camping. Uh, Jolly Swagman, which is Waltzing Matilda, one of Australia's favourite songs. It's just a guy who's walking through the bush. He has his billy, he has his swag on so that he can sleep anywhere.
Tent thing that a single person could fit into and sleep in for like camping and stuff. Now, here are a couple of weird ones. A stubby is what they call a bottle. So if they.
Alright, so there's two meanings for stubby. Stubby is a bottle of beer, normally 375 ml. Stubby with a Y is beer, i.e., is shorts. So shorts are also called stubbies. But anyway, she's talking about beer here. So if you turn around and said, I'll have a stubby of 4X, that means that you want a bottle of beer.
They go into like a bottle shop or if they go into a bar, they'll ask for a stubby of something. That just means a bottle of something. And if they want the can of something, they'll call it a tinny sometimes.
Alright, so I have a tinny right here. So I've got a tinny of beer. So this is a tinny. And then if you get the bigger bottle, that's called a tawley. Some people also call it a long neck. But most people will say a tawley. Just depends which state you come from.
Or a tin. Another weird thing they say instead of just thank you is they'll say thanking you. I've never heard anyone say thanking you before as thank you, but
Never heard that, darling. Thanking you. Never heard that.
they say it. And they also say ta. Like, I didn't know what that was the first time someone said that to me. They'll say
Okay, so this is very common. I say this all the time. This is a particular English thing, possibly Scottish. Maybe I don't know why I picked it up, but tar just means thank you. I said it to my wife last night. Actually, she didn't know what I meant. So, but anyway, tar, thank you.
ta, 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 ta. But it just means thank you. Now this one is just silly.
Oh, just on tar, because tartar also means bye bye. So if I give you something, you say tar. But if I say, okay, I'll see you later, ta-ta, that means see you later, bye-bye.
Again, was very confused the first time I heard it. Was sanger? It means sandwich. Like a steak sanger is a steak sandwich.
Yeah.
But a rang.
So we did that. So sanger just means sandwich.
Ranger is a redhead. Another thing.
Alright, so ranger can have a couple of meanings as well. Generally it means a ginger or a ginger or someone with red hair. But a ranger can also be a person who's impersonating something that they shouldn't be doing, which is very similar to ringer. But ringer also is a work of someone who shears sheep. Yeah, so someone who goes around and picks up the fleece of the sheep in a shearing shed is also called a ringer. But I've heard ranger, not only because you can say he's a ranger, which means he's a redhead who shouldn't be in this place.
Thing Australians say that I'd never heard before coming here was it won't be a minute. When they're trying to tell you like what they're about to do, it won't take long. In Canada, I think.
Again, I haven't heard this phrase used very often, but it would be more likely it won't take a minute. Okay, so if you're down at the fish and chip shop and you say, how long's it going to be? They'll turn around and go, don't worry, it won't take a minute. I haven't heard that very often in my life, but I'm sure it happens.
I think we say like it'll just be a minute or just a second. They'll say like it won't be a minute. And get this one, okay? A doggy bag. What does that make you think of? A doggy bag makes me think of like the.
Okay, so a doggy bag is when you go to the restaurant and you have leftovers and you ask the waitress or the waiter, can we get a doggy bag? Which means they take all the scraps or all the leftovers so that you can give it to your dog when you get home. But this has actually been, I don't know if it's been legally outlawed, but most restaurants won't give you a doggy bag anymore in case you take it home and eat it 4 days later and you get sick and then you sue the restaurant. So a lot of restaurants now won't give you a doggy bag, but it's just a leftover bag, particularly bones and stuff that you can give to your pets.
The bag that you use to pick up your dog's waste when you go on a walk. But in Australia, if someone asks for a doggy bag, they're probably at a restaurant asking if they can have a takeaway container, which I don't know where that came from, but I feel like I don't want to know the origins of that. If you're Australian or have been to Australia, I would love for you to comment down below your favorite weird things that Australians say or things that you feel are very Australian to say. Like other than "G'day, mate." which they honestly like don't say that much. Or if you're not Australian and have never been, I would love for you to tell me where you're from. And
Alright, well, that's simply not true. Most people do say g'day. They probably don't say that to her because they automatically know that she's Canadian. So they're not going to say that. They probably say, how are you, or how you going, or something like that. But yeah, a lot of people say g'day.
what do you feel is the most like stereotypical things that are only really said where you're from?
Alright, so that was quite interesting. So what we're going to do, we'll go on to another video. So the next video is a woman from Argentina who's been living in Australia and what she thinks about the differences between Argentina and Australia. So we'll hook on over there, but again, make sure that you go and have a look at the original video on this. I'll leave a link in my notes. Gabrielle Linda, so Canadian woman living in Australia. So let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so now we're going to look at an Argentina lady, Argentina. She is called Simple Living Australia. Again, if you like her videos, make sure you go over and subscribe. It's hard enough to make money in the real world, let alone being a YouTube creator. And make sure you show her some love. So this is her video. She's talking about 11 weird things that she's experienced. I can tell by the house that she is in Melbourne. So this is like a traditional cottage, working mining cottage, workers cottage you'd probably call it, from about 1800s. So beautiful building. But anyway, let's listen to what she has to say.
In this video, we're going to talk about the weirdest things I found in Australia that I had never seen before. Let's get started. The first thing is separate toilets.
Alright, so I was wrong. Maybe she's in Sydney. Maybe she's at the Rocks because she just showed Bondi Beach then, and she also showed the Opera House, so my fault. Okay, toilets, or we call them dunnies, or the loo.
And no bidets. In Australia, many houses are usually designed with the toilets separate from the main bathroom. So basically you have a little room just for the toilet and then a bathroom where you wash your hands, you have the mirror, the shower. And based on my research, historically, this was done for practical reasons, to allow one person to use the toilet while another uses the bathroom, etc. And another reason, of course, is hygiene and privacy. And again, this is something super surprising because in my country, I'm originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and in my country, separate toilets don't exist. So when I first came here, especially I was living in a share house, and yeah, I found it very interesting, but at the same time, again, very practical, especially if you're living in a house with a lot of people.
Alright, so you don't notice this sort of stuff when you live in a country. Okay, so I live in the Philippines now, but I'm Australian. I lived in Australia for 35 years. But I think the reason is because most people used to have what's called a thunderbox, which is a toilet that was outside of the house. I'm just trying to think. Even in Brisbane, when I was a kid, my nana never had a toilet inside. So we always, like if you wake up in the middle of the night, you used to have to go outside and go to a dunny. And it was always a scary event. Didn't know whether there were snakes or spiders or anything. And then every Monday, you used to have the guy come and pick up the bucket from underneath the thunderbox. Very interesting job. They used to get looked after a lot. They used to wear big leather coats. They would carry the bucket on their thing and they'd get spilt with piss and shit over them. But at Christmas time, everyone would leave them beer or give them money. So I think it was about 1982 that Brisbane got sewerage for the first time. So I was at least 8 years old before we had a toilet inside the house. Most times it's in the thunderbox outside. Questions about why it's called a thunderbox? See if you can work it out in the comments.
Perhaps a big family with children. You don't have to wait for your turn to use the toilet. You just can go and then another person can have a shower in the separate bathroom. And another thing in relation to this, in relation to bathrooms and toilets, and this is something that I had first seen in the US, and then when I came to Australia again, it surprised me because it's not usual here either. It's bidets, or we call them bidets. Yeah, that was another huge difference. In my country, Argentina, bidets are basically an essential part of the bathroom, and in many European countries, this is the case as well. But yeah, in Australia, they don't exist. And I remember I was so surprised that I told my friends about it, and they were like, "Oh, that's disgusting. How come they don't have bidets?" Then I told my Aussie friends about the bidets, and they find disgusting the fact that we have bidets as well. So it's a very interesting cultural difference. And yeah, I don't know, it's something that caught my attention. The second thing.
Alright, so in the Philippines they do have bidets, and I'm sort of stuck on the fence with it. Sometimes I use toilet paper, sometimes I use the bidet. I'm getting used to using the bidet. Most times I use both now, and I've come around. I think it's actually cleaner to use the bidet. But yeah, it's pretty rare. It may be in a hotel in Australia you might have a bidet, but no way would a common house have one. But I'm coming around to it.
That I found very weird is Vegemite. Aussies love their Vegemite, and again, this is one of the weirdest things that I've come across. And if you don't know what it is, this is a spread that is made of brewer's yeast extract, a byproduct of beer.
Alright, so Vegemite is a cultural icon in Australia. You always know that you're living with, or your boyfriend or your husband is Australian, because they don't wear shoes and there is a jar of Vegemite in the fridge. Now this dude is a real Australian because he's going hard. He's got he's got a lot of Vegemite on there. I would not suggest doing this if it's your first time because that's pretty full on. I could eat that, but there's no way in the world that my Filipino wife could eat that. She likes Vegemite after a couple of tries, but only a little bit because it's just basically salt. So to put that much Vegemite on, yeah, that'll wake you up in the morning. That definitely will wake you up in the morning. But it's really nice if you use it the way that you like it. It's just basically a salt. You'll also see with Australians that with rice, a lot of Australians like to put soya sauce on their rice because it reminds them of Vegemite. But yeah, I love it.
Manufacturing that you can put on a piece of toast, crackers, sandwiches, and I remember
Jesus Christ, he's going hard. Alright.
the first time that I tried Vegemite. It wasn't actually here in Australia, but it was 1 year before coming here. I was studying English with an Aussie teacher, and I remember that he brought Vegemite for me to try. And at the beginning, when I looked at it, I hadn't tried it yet. When I looked at it, I thought it was yummy because it reminded me of chocolate, right? Like if you see the color of Vegemite, it looks like Nutella. And then, of course, I gave it a try. He put it on a piece of toast. Basically, you have just to put a bit of butter, then a bit of Vegemite, and I tried it, and yeah, my face, it was basically lemon face. It was the weirdest thing that I had ever tried in my life. Now I like it. I don't eat it every day, but I do live with my Aussie partner, and Vegemite is an essential item in the house, in the fridge. And to give you an idea, it basically tastes very salty.
And he just licked the knife as well, so he's got all that lovely butter, he's got all that lovely Vegemite. That makes me feel homesick.
Kind of bitter as well. And an interesting fact as well is that Vegemite apparently was born in the 1920s in Melbourne, and it was an attempt to replicate the British Marmite, which I haven't tried. Please don't troll me, because when I read this interesting fact to my partner, he got very offended. So please don't blame it on me. This is on the internet. I don't know whether it is true or not. You can leave a comment below and tell me what you think. And
interesting thing about Vegemite, because it's such a staple diet or staple food, a very famous iconic food in Australia, in the 90s, I think they changed the name to something ridiculous. It was exactly the same as when they tried to change the name of Coke, and they called it New Coke, and there was a massive out outrage about it, and it was some stupid thing they called it Y2 veggie. It was ridiculous. Anyway, they had to after 6 months they had to change it back to Vegemite.
One thing that caught my attention when I first came to Australia is the fact that alcohol is sold separately. So you won't find alcohol in supermarkets. I remember the first time that I went to a supermarket to get a bottle of wine, and I spent at least 30 minutes going around just looking for the alcohol section, right? And I couldn't find it until I asked, and of course I realized that there was a bottle shop outside. Apparently this is a measure that they've taken to limit excessive alcohol drinking. As I've said in other videos, Australia is known for having a strong drinking culture, and that's why there are high taxes on alcohol, and also it seems that that's the reason why they have separate bottle shops. Whereas in my country, in Argentina, as well as in many European countries,
Alright, so Australia is known for a drinking culture. Well, I've got a beer right now doing this video. And yeah, so there are a lot of restrictions. 10 o'clock, no more alcohol. You can't buy alcohol in the supermarket. You can't buy alcohol at the servo. You can only buy it at a bottle shop or the pub. And like I said, 10 o'clock to 10 o'clock. You can't buy alcohol before or after.
when you go to the supermarket, you'll always find the alcohol section right in there. We don't have separate bottle shops, so that's an interesting difference and something that now I've gotten used to it, but yeah, it's still a bit, I don't know, weird. Again, another thing that caught my attention when I first came to Australia is the fact that Australians place stuff that they don't want on the street outside their home. And this practice is called hard rubbish collection. And most of these items are usually pieces of furniture or appliances that people put.
Alright, so I've never heard it called hard rubbish. I call it rubbish pickup or council pickup. Alright, but this is a very common thing in Australia that so they do it on postcodes. So the local council every year has two pickups, alright? So what you do is you take all the stuff that you don't want and you put it outside, and then the the people will come and pick it up in a truck. But it gives you an opportunity that if you need something, alright, so people put all sorts of stuff out in the front of the house. They might have an extra fridge, and most people will put a sign on it and say working. So if you want a beer fridge in your garage or something in your man caves, you can go pick up the fridge. No one gives a shit. Most of this stuff's pretty good. Alright, so all the wood you can use in a fireplace. They've got a chair there. Alright, it might be broken. If it's broken, you don't pick it up. But if it's not broken, alright, we'll take it home. So it's a bit of like a recycling. Now the garbos who pick it up, they also have, this is something I don't think she's probably going to be aware of, but at the landfill or the dump, they have shops. Okay, so people will pick this up and then sort through it and go, alright, well there's a garden hose. And they actually have a shop at the dump. It's called the dump shop or the shit shop. And you can go down there and you can buy a mower for $1. Yeah, as long as it's working, you try it, you put a new spark plug in it, you've got a mower for $1. So it's a good way of recycling. It's also good for students, people who don't have very much money. They can go and pick up a chair off the side of the road, and you would be surprised what people throw out. Brand new couches, brand new beds. All you got to do, pick them up. Nobody will have a problem with it.
put outside their homes for other people to come and pick them up, or for a truck to pick it up. So it's very interesting, and to be honest, many of these items are usually in really good shape. I know many people who basically make a living out of that. They go and collect, I don't know, a couch that perhaps is in good condition or just a bit dirty.
I know a person here in the Philippines, an Australian guy, goes round and picks up bicycles. You'd be surprised. Kids don't want to ride their bike anymore. They just stick out a bike. Like, nothing wrong with the bike. He goes round, picks them all up, puts them in a container, ships them to the Philippines, and sells them. And if you don't want to do that, the metal. A lot of people go around, pick up the metal. TVs, they pick up TVs because of the copper content. The only thing that people don't pick up is tyres. But you'd be surprised how long it takes. If you empty out all the stuff that you don't want out of your house, maybe 20 minutes, it's all gone. I don't care what it is.
They clean it up or they refurbish it, and then they sell it on Facebook Marketplace, and they made a lot of money. So yeah, perhaps it's a good business idea if you want to explore that. Another thing that I found very surprising when I first came to Australia is the fact that there are very, very hefty fines for putting your feet on public transport seats. And these fines actually go up to 288 Australian dollars. It's insane. And of course, it makes sense, right? I don't think anywhere in the world it's polite or respectful to put your feet on the seat, right? On the public transport seat where other people are going to sit. It's basic good manners. But
Alright, I'm confused. She's got Flinders Street, so she's showing images of Sydney and Melbourne, but I think she's in Melbourne. But yeah, this is pretty common in Australia. Big fines, littering, spitting, any sort of dirtiness is looked down upon in Australia. You throw something on the street, people will call you out. You put your feet on someone else's chair, and even if the person's not there, it doesn't matter. Someone is going to be there, so they will get called out by general public, young, old, whoever. But yeah, big fines.
I had never seen that they actually fine you for that, and such, again, hefty fines. So yeah, that's something that caught my attention. Housewarming parties. Now, I remember the first time that I was invited to a gathering here in Australia, and that was actually a housewarming party. And I remember when I got that invitation, I was a bit confused because I was like, what is a housewarming party? I had to Google it, right? And I'm sure that housewarming parties are very normal in many countries, but at least not in mine. So again, for me, this was weird. And if you don't know what a housewarming party is, let me explain very quickly. This is basically a tradition where you invite your friends to come see your new home. Basically, when you move to a new house, you have a gathering with drinks, finger food, etc., and you show your friends.
Yeah, alright. So it's just like a lucky thing for your new house. So it doesn't matter whether you're renting, doesn't matter whether you bought the house, doesn't really matter. Just you got a new house, you bring your friends over, have some party pies, have some snacks, have some sangers, have a barbecue, have some beers. Yeah, just to like bless the house.
Your new place. That's basically it. I feel that it's an excuse to just have a gathering and drink with your mates, and that's perfectly fine. I actually love housewarming parties, so much so that in my previous place, back in 2019, before the pandemic, I hosted a onesie housewarming party. We were 35 adults, all wearing onesies and yeah, having snacks, chatting, playing games. It was super fun, and yeah, since then I love housewarming parties.
I wouldn't say onesie. Never used that in my life. I'd call that a jumpsuit. But anyway, onesie, that's a new thing. Younger people use onesies. I don't use that.
Yes. So yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. Okay, let's talk about the healthcare system and doctors in Australia, because this is something that as well, it really surprised me when I first came here. To be honest, I was a bit confused. Now, if you
Alright, so the healthcare system in Australia is very good, but it's also very bad. But the very good part is that it's free, so it doesn't matter who you are, as long as you're a resident of Australia, you get free healthcare. Now there's lots of different levels, lots of different ways that you have to do something, But generally, we don't go to the hospital unless it's extremely serious. We go to what's the GP, just your general practitioner. Okay, so most times the healthcare for people is dealt with just at your local clinic. If it's a serious thing, then you go to the hospital, or if it's a particular thing, then you will go to a specialist. But you can't go to a specialist unless you go to the GP first. It doesn't really matter because it's free, but it is a bit of a annoying thing. If you want to go to the dentist, well, then you just go straight to your local dentist. That's a different thing. But let's say that you had a problem with your heart, you would go to the GP first. They would give you a referral to a cardiologist. You can't just show up at the cardiologist. You have to be checked out by the GP first. It's just the way it is.
If you want to know about the healthcare system in Australia, I have a whole dedicated video about it. I think it's going to make your life easier. Now, in my country, in Argentina, and I know many European countries are exactly the same, when you have an ailment, when you're feeling sick, perhaps you have a tummy issue, you usually go to the specialist directly. You go to the gastroenterologist, right? That's the case in my country. Whereas here in Australia, your first point of contact is your GP, your general practitioner. Basically, a doctor that does general practice, and I'm not a specialist, but they do everything. It's general medicine. And then perhaps they're going to give you a prescription, refer you for x-rays, etc. Now, if your tummy ache gets worse over time and the issue doesn't get resolved, then your GP is going to refer you to a specialist. But
Now, the thing with the specialist is that you do have to pay up front. Okay, so even though the healthcare system in Australia is free, that is for all general ailments, as she said, or sickness or something. But if you have to go to a specialist, you have to pay that money up front. Most specialists in Australia are about $280 for a consultation, so automatically $280, and then another $280 per hour, depending on how sick you are. But you can claim a rebate. You go to Medicare and you get 80% of that back. Alright, so out of $560, you get back $500, something like that. So it's not exactly free, but it's still better than paying $580.
your first point of contact here in Australia is a GP. Another example, if you have to go to the gynecologist and have a pap smear, here in Australia, again, you go to your GP first. Whereas in my country, you usually go to the gynecologist first, and you're going to have your own gynecologist, your specialist, and you have all the tests. The gynecologist does everything for you. Whereas here in Australia, you are going to go to the GP or...
Alright, so I'm not a woman, but I know this, that like in Australia, there's a big push for every year, every woman should go to their doctor and have a gynecological exam, check for cervical cancer. Also, we have a vaccine that's given to teenage girls. Very important to me because I've got two teenage girls. Alright, so they have a vaccine that was developed in Australia, mind you. Also, you cannot buy drugs just over the counter. You can buy like small things like painkillers and cough lollies and stuff like that. But anything that's important, like a medical thing, you have to go to the GP first. They will write out a script or a prescription for you. Then you leave the doctor's office and then you go to the chemist. And only then can you get the drugs that the doctor has given to you. Again, most times you do pay for them, but you can, depending on who you are, get a rebate from Medicare. So if you're a senior, let's say that your insulin costs $80, you pay the $80 at the chemist, you go to Medicare, and they give you back $72. So it costs you $8.
or a nurse perhaps, and they're going to do that for you. Something interesting, again, a huge difference. Again, another thing that really surprised me when I first came to Australia was Australian football or footy or Aussie rules, or yeah, it has so many names.
All right. So my team just won the grand final in the footy. So anyway, Aussie rules football is the major sport in Australia. We have lots of different football. We've got Australian rules football. We've got rugby league. We've got rugby union. We've got soccer. So we have the four. So it goes in that order. AFL, rugby league is the next most popular football. Rugby union is the third. And then the fourth one is what most Europeans would call football, or what we call soccer. I would actually put another sport in between that, well, two actually, cricket. So I would go AFL cricket, NRL or rugby league, netball, which is a female sport, then rugby union, then soccer. But Australia is sports mad, so we play anything. And basketball is probably the next one. And then baseball, nobody plays baseball.
AFL. Anyway, I remember the first time I was here, I got my apartment, I turned the TV on, and there was a footy match going on. For me, it was a big surprise. To be honest, at the time, I hadn't even heard about footy. Yeah, it was a mix of rugby and soccer, but I wasn't really sure what was going on. It's basically neither. It's just a unique sport, very unique again to Australia, and Aussies love it, especially here in Melbourne. Most of my Australian colleagues as well, they're super fans of Collingwood, Richmond, Essendon. It's very interesting. I've been to two footy matches. What I really liked is the family environment. It's very family oriented. Rivals can sit next to each other. There's no aggression.
It's one of the few sports where you can have two teams that hate each other, like Carlton and Collingwood, and you're sitting next to a Collingwood person. But there's no violence, it's just banter. But yeah, I like that because it comes from country football. So you take your kids down, start these players, they start when they're 5 years old. Mum and dad take them down to the ground. They play against each. Most of the professional players have played each other all the way through when they were kids. So there's no vitriol or anything. Yeah, sometimes the supporters can get a bit, lippy, but most times you can sit next to the supporter of the other team and you just have fun watching a great game. If you haven't seen AFL, make sure you go and check out some AFL videos because it's the best game in the world.
Well, at least in my opinion, when I compare it to the Argentinian team or when you compare it to England, they're much more, yeah, it's another kind of passion if you want. But here in Australia, it's more family oriented, and that's something that, yeah, I really appreciate and I do like. Another thing that surprised me about Australia is the fact that it's compulsory for school kids to always wear sun protective hats outside. Of course, the reason for this is that Australia has some of the highest UV levels in the world. So it's a measure, again, that for me was surprising because when I was in school, I didn't have to wear a hat. It wasn't compulsory. But at the same time, yeah, it makes complete sense. So it's actually really, really good.
All right, so like my state is Queensland. I was born in Brisbane. Queensland has the highest rate of skin cancer in the world. So not only is it compulsory for kids to have hats on, it's also compulsory to have sunscreen. It's normally free, like schools provide the sunscreen. The kids cannot go outside unless they have a hat on. Okay, and also just to go back to the medical thing, we have something called mole scan, where every year everybody has to go to, not has to, but it's recommended to go to a scanning clinic and they have a look at the moles on your body, see whether that they're malignant or whether they're benign. If you need to have a mole cut off, it's free. They will cut it off. They want to get rid of skin cancer out of Australia totally. Also, anywhere near the beach, you will have restaurants, you will have places at the beach that you get free sunscreen. If you go to a place like the Gold Coast, there's a guy there who sprays it on your whole body. That's his whole job. is just to make sure that you're covered in sunscreen. And I think it goes up to factor 40 now. So pretty good. Make sure you do that.
And another thing in relation to the Australian school dress code, if you want, is the fact that school kids have to carry very big bags. So you see the little 7-year-old carrying a bag that is almost bigger than them. And I don't know, it's weird. In my uneducated opinion, and I'm not a health professional, I'm not a chiropractor, so I'm not sure. But in my opinion, carrying a lot of weight at that age probably poses some kind of risk for the kid's posture. I'm not sure. You can leave a comment if you know more about this. Growing up, in my case, all kids have the wheelie bags. We basically use that. So yeah, that was another thing that I found weird, surprising. I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's interesting, I guess. Okay, another thing that I think it's weird, surprising.
All right, why is that weird to have a school bag? I don't know.
It's the unique wildlife here in Australia. Of course, before coming here, you always hear about the kangaroos and the koalas, and these are very unique animals indeed. I don't think there are animals like these marsupials anywhere else in the world. But something that not many people know, and I include myself when I first came here, is that there are many more unique animals beyond the kangaroo and the koala. There are wallabies, quokkas, wombats. So every time I go hiking and every time I come across one of these animals, I found it very fascinating. It kind of tells you about the unique geography and diversity in Australia. I know that the quokkas are unique, for example, to Western Australia. So yeah, it's very interesting. And to be honest, even when I see a kangaroo or a wallaby, I still get very excited. Even again, after so many years of living here, yeah, it's fascinating. And
All right, so she's from Argentina. She probably doesn't realize that there's a lot of marsupials in South America as well. There's also a lot of marsupials in Indonesia and Papua New Guinea. But yeah, the wildlife in Australia is very unique, can be very dangerous, particularly snakes. We've got crocodiles, we've got sharks, we have trees that will hurt you, all sorts of stuff going, box jellyfish, urichangi. So yeah, it's something. People think that the whole of Australia is just full of kangaroos. It's not like that. Kangaroos are there. Most kangaroos will not hurt you. If you get confronted by one, yeah, okay, just stand up for yourself. More importantly is don't stuff around with the snakes, don't stuff around with spiders, don't stuff around with crocodiles. They're the important ones. But I always think, well, Jesus Christ, if I was in North America and a grizzly bear come, all right, that's just exactly the same kind of thing. You be respectful of nature, you know. Yeah, I wouldn't stuff around with a grizzly bear. You don't stuff around with a crocodile. That's it.
it's very, very unique. Another thing that really surprised me about Australia, and perhaps it shouldn't have, considering how important the beach lifestyle is for this country, is that they have a beach safety education program called NIPERS. This is basically a program where kids as young as 5 years old learn about beach safety and rescue techniques. So if you're at the beach at any coastal town in Australia, usually in the morning during weekends, you are probably going to come across all these kids.
Alright, so this is a big thing in Australia. It's not just at the beach, but it's also in pools, because there's a lot of homeowners that have pools at home. So we have very big restrictions on fencing around pools, because there'd be nothing worse than not only your kid drowning, but someone else's kid drowning in your pool. That would be absolutely disgraceful. So, I think on average about 5 kids drown in home pools each year, but we're trying to get that down to 0. And the best way to do that is to teach kids how to swim. So in school, young kids learn how to swim very early. I would struggle to find an Australian who can't swim. Struggle. But anyway, Now, there's a difference between swimming in a pool and swimming at the beach. So, the beach in Australia is a very big cultural thing. So, teaching your kids and having the trust in them that they're able to swim in the surf, because we also have things called flags, swim between the flags. So the lifesavers will come out in the morning, they'll have a look at the surf, and they'll go, where's the rip? Okay, this place is safe. They put two flags. The kids swim between those two flags because we don't want them to be swept out. Now, I have actually been swept out before as a kid when I was about 10, and I went all the way out to the horizon, about 15 kilometers, all the way out. I got sucked all the way out, but because of my schooling, because of my training, I didn't panic. I relaxed, and I let the current bring me back all the way back into the beach. And I ended up about 5 kilometers away from my parents 4 hours later, and it was only because of the schooling and the swimming training that we did at school that I was able to survive. So this is very important to Australians. But anyway, we might call it a video here. It's already gone on long enough. I love that this woman is doing videos on Australia. I love that she looks like she's enjoying herself. She's having a great life. Australia is a great place. It's full of great people, full of great animal life, full of great environment, great lifestyle. Okay, you do have to work a lot and it's expensive. But anyway, I hope you enjoy the video. Make sure you leave a like and a comment. It doesn't cost you anything. Help save the quokkas, help save the whales, help save the dolphins and the orcas. It's a simple thing. Just push on the like button. But until next time, salada.